People lie more often than we think, and sometimes it's those closest to us. We like to believe we're good at spotting lies, but we often ignore the signs to preserve trust. If you're ready to uncover the truth, here are 7 clear indicators that someone might be deceiving you. So start with the first sign, which is quick topic changes. Have you ever brought up an important topic only for the other person to suddenly switch to something irrelevant? It feels like they're dodging the conversation, avoiding the real issue at hand. This is more than just being distracted. It's often a sign of someone wanting to escape an uncomfortable truth. I was once in a relationship where this happened frequently. Whenever I wanted to discuss future plans or anything serious, the conversation quickly veered toward trivial things, like what we should have for dinner. At first, I brushed it off, thinking they weren't ready for serious discussions. But over time, I realized they were intentionally avoiding these topics to dodge responsibility and accountability. People change the subject not because they forget or are disinterested, but because they're uncomfortable confronting reality. When we allow these distractions, we also allow dishonesty to go unnoticed. If someone keeps steering conversations away from important matters, it's time to question the depth of your relationship. Honest relationships are built on direct, open conversations, even when those conversations are difficult. The next time you notice someone quickly changing the subject, don't just let it slide. Hold them accountable, because avoiding tough topics is often a way to avoid the truth. Second, listen to understand, not to respond. Listening is an underrated skill, especially when it comes to meaningful conversations. Many people don't listen to understand. They simply wait for their turn to speak. This habit leads others to feel ignored and unappreciated, even if we think we're actively engaging in the conversation. I've been guilty of this. I'd sit in conversations, nodding along while mentally preparing my next response. And guess what? People can sense when you're not fully present. It doesn't make them feel heard. It makes them feel used. True listening, however, is about giving your undivided attention without the pressure of offering advice or commentary. One day, I was speaking with a colleague who was going through a tough time. My first instinct was to jump in with advice, but instead, I held back and just listened. By the end, they expressed how much it meant to them to simply be heard. This experience taught me the power of listening without an agenda. In a world full of noise, true listening is a rare and valuable gift. People don't always need solutions. They need to feel understood. So, next time you're in a conversation, shift your focus from crafting the perfect reply to genuinely understanding the other person. That's how meaningful connections are built. Third, unnecessary defensiveness. Have you ever asked a harmless question, and the response you received was far more defensive than necessary? It's like asking, "Did you eat the last piece of cake?" and getting a full monologue about how they would never do such a thing. This type of overreaction is a clear indicator that someone is hiding something. I once worked on a group project where one team member became incredibly defensive whenever I asked for updates on his portion of the work. A simple inquiry like, "How's your section going?" would lead to an outburst about how hard he was working and how he didn't need to be micromanaged. It wasn't long before we discovered that he hadn't completed his tasks and was trying to cover it up. When people react with unwarranted defensiveness, it's often a sign of guilt. Honest people don't feel the need to over-explain or get upset over a simple question. They provide clear, calm responses. The defensiveness isn't about you being intrusive. It's about them trying to protect themselves from being caught in a lie. If you notice someone becoming overly defensive without cause, don't dismiss it. It's likely they're guilt talking, and it's a sign that something deeper may be going on. Trust your instincts and dig a little deeper when necessary. Fourth, too polished stories. Have you ever heard someone tell a story that's so perfectly crafted it feels rehearsed? The details are flawless, the timing is impeccable, and it sounds like something out of a movie. Chances are, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I knew a guy who would always tell these polished, cinematic stories about his life. He once described a business deal he closed, down to the exact second he signed the contract and gazed out over the city skyline. It sounded impressive, too impressive. Eventually, I found out he had exaggerated half the details and completely fabricated the rest. Life is messy, and real stories rarely follow a perfect script. When someone's account is too smooth, it's usually a sign they're hiding something, or trying to control the narrative. Most people don't want to call out overly polished stories because they enjoy the entertainment, but that's exactly how liars get away with it. They rely on our desire for neat, easy-to-follow tales. The next time you hear a story that seems too perfect, don't just take it at face value. Ask follow-up questions. Real truth is often messy, and those who are telling the truth won't mind if you probe a little deeper. If someone's story unravels under scrutiny, you're probably dealing with a fabrication. Fifth, body language betrayal. People's body language often reveals more than their words. Have you ever noticed someone turning their body slightly away from you during a conversation, even though they're talking directly to you? This subtle shift can be a clear signal that they're uncomfortable or hiding something. I had a friend who would always angle his body away from me whenever our conversations got personal. At first, I didn't think much of it, but it happened consistently when we touched on serious or uncomfortable topics. Eventually, I learned he had been concealing important details from me, and his body language gave him away long before his words did. Body language doesn't lie. When someone physically distances themselves from you, even just slightly, it's a subconscious attempt to avoid the truth. Many people dismiss these cues, but over time, I've learned that paying attention to these nonverbal signs can reveal a lot about what's really going on. If you notice someone turning away from you during a serious conversation, don't ignore it. It's a sign that they may be uncomfortable with what's being discussed or are trying to avoid facing the truth. Take the cue and ask the tougher questions. Body language is one of the most honest forms of communication, and it's worth paying attention to. Sixth, laughing off serious topics. We've all experienced it. You bring up a serious issue, and the other person just laughs it off as if it's no big deal. While humor can lighten the mood, constantly using it to dismiss important conversations is a red flag. In a past relationship, whenever I tried to talk about feeling disconnected, my partner would laugh and say, "You're overthinking it." At first, I thought it was just their way of easing tension, but over time, I realized they were using humor to avoid dealing with the real issue. Humor is a great way to deflect from serious topics, and many people use it to dodge uncomfortable conversations. We often let it slide because we don't want to be the one pressing too hard after someone has lightened the mood with a joke. But here's the thing. Real issues need to be addressed, and laughter doesn't solve underlying problems. When someone repeatedly laughs off serious matters, it's time to question why they're avoiding the conversation. It's not about being overly serious all the time. It's about knowing when a topic deserves more attention. Don't be afraid to press for honesty when something important is brushed off with a joke. 7. Vague when pressed for details. Have you ever asked someone for specifics and instead received a vague, roundabout answer? This lack of clarity is a classic sign that they're avoiding the truth. When someone evades giving details, it's usually because they don't want to be pinned down. I once worked with a colleague who always talked about big projects and deals they were supposedly working on. But whenever we asked for specifics, like which companies were involved or how far along the project was, the answers were always vague. "We're in the early stages," or "it's complicated," were common responses. Eventually, we discovered the deals didn't exist. People use vagueness to avoid accountability. They hope that by keeping things unclear, they won't have to face the consequences of being caught in a lie. But honest people don't hide behind ambiguity. When asked for specifics, they provide clear answers without hesitation. If someone is constantly vague when pressed for details, it's time to push a little harder. Honesty is direct and transparent. Vagueness, on the other hand, is often a tool used to conceal the truth. Don't let someone's unclear answers prevent you from getting the clarity you deserve. Lies aren't always blatant. Sometimes they're hidden in subtle actions like changing the subject, giving overly polished stories, or being unnecessarily vague. By paying attention to these signs, you can uncover the truth that people may be trying to hide. Trust your instincts and don't shy away from asking tough questions. You deserve honesty, and if someone can't provide that, it may be time to reevaluate the relationship. The truth builds stronger connections than any well-crafted lie ever could. Stay vigilant, trust yourself, and never settle for anything less than transparency. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more insights.